Hey everyone, welcome to Broadband Deployment News. The Biden administration has released a progress report on the Internet for All program, which is really it's the broadband portions of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And they've talked about what they've been able to accomplish and then what's expected next year. And there's one thing noticeably missing for next year. Be right back. Hey, thanks for joining me. Rick Uzzi here with Broadband Deployment News. So first off, if you saw something pop up where I was live an hour or so ago, and I apologize for that because I was actually doing some testing for Tech Tuesday. We're going to do a Tech Tuesday series with our VP of Call Center Services, Jason Young, and I was testing some streaming with him, bringing him in, and forgot that I still had the streaming key set for this live stream. So I apologize for that. So if you popped in and you saw that, me and him talking about how I was having a problem getting it working, that's what that was about. Or maybe you saw the video come up later and you clicked on it, it was no longer available. That's what that was about. So we just had I think it showed the thumbnail from the last actual live stream that I did. So I apologize for that. But Jason and I will be doing a stream. And if you're a broadband service provider, especially if you're somebody who's new, who is going to be getting some funds either through some of the money that's been available, either through ARPA or USDA Reconnect or whatever. If you're going to be getting some funds and you're starting to deploy broadband, or you're looking ahead to some funds that are becoming later through the Internet for All program, and you're thinking about how do we do call center? How are we going to handle all these calls for internet support, especially if you don't do that, or maybe you're just taking support on something else today like power or something other than that, or maybe maybe you've never done this. So check that. We're going to be going through. We're going to start that the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. So that's Tuesday the 29th. And it'll be a series of several of these on Tuesdays at 3 o'clock. That's when I do Tech Tuesday. We're going to talk about what it takes to set up, a good broadband support call center. Now, we do that ourselves. We've been doing that since 1995. It wasn't broadband; it was dial-up at that point. But obviously, we started taking broadband calls as broadband became available. So we've been doing that long. We do outsourced call center services for lots and lots of broadband service providers. So we can tell you how it should be done, but also if you decide after you figure out everything you need to do, you don't want to do it, you can always turn to us and we can help you with that as well. So make sure you tune in. Again, if you're a broadband service provider, either existing or somebody new. If you're existing, maybe you want to find somebody that can take overflow calls or after hours calls, supplement you there. Or maybe you realize, we're just growing so fast, we just want to outsource all of that. Everything's US-based call centers, let us know. So again, thanks for joining me. So today I wanted to talk about this. This came out yesterday. So this is basically the Biden administration talking about what they've accomplished so far with this program. And I'm going to make it a little bigger so I can make it a bit easier. That's not it. Hold on here. Let me go in here. There we go. I think that'll do it. Yeah. All right. So this is the Biden administration talking about what they've accomplished so far this year, and they're looking a little bit ahead to next year. So you can see here the bipartisan infrastructure law. This is basically, it's the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. So they changed it to a more marketing name of bipartisan infrastructure law because they wanted to emphasize that there were some Republicans that signed on to this. But this is basically the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And that act included infrastructure other than broadband. But then they took the broadband kinds of stuff and they're calling that the Internet for All. That includes BEAD and then I think middle mile, a few other things that are in there. Not the ACP, based on the money that they're talking about here, but you can see that's what they're talking about. So 1 year ago today, President Biden signed the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or bipartisan infrastructure law, which tasked the NTIA with administering grant programs totaling more than $48 billion. So there's $44.45 billion in BEAD, and then that's probably a middle mile program and some other grant programs in there. That's to connect everyone in America to affordable, reliable, high-speed internet service. Internet for All initiative is moving with speed to deliver on the Infrastructure Act's goals. We are proud of what we've accomplished in the first year. And a lot of people would say, well, it's not moving that fast because, it's been a year now and the vast majority of the $48 billion is still waiting to be delivered. So, but they have made some progress here. So I wanted to talk about that. So they say crafting notice of funding opportunity, or NOFOs, ahead of Congress's deadline. So that's good. So they had a deadline to get these NOFOs out for the BEAD program and the Middle Mile program and State Digital Equity Planning Grant program. So that's all those things are going to be what total up to that $48 billion. Put all that together. Obtaining applications from all eligible states and territories, 56 in total, to participate in Internet for All. And that's really the BEAD program. So each state had to indicate that they were interested in participating, and it might also be encompassing some of these other programs, but really primarily, do you want your share of this $44.45 billion or so from the BEAD program? Because each state will get a minimum of $100 million from that, and then based on the FCC mapping, they'll get a percentage of that depending on how many unserved areas they have compared to all unserved areas in the country. Territories get, I think, a quarter of that as far as their minimums, and they'll also get some percentage as well. Then they secured 247 applications for Middle Mile program grants, so they've already got those applications in. No applications have been submitted, obviously, for BEAD. That's all going to happen later when these the amount of funds are determined, and there's a lot that's got to happen before those applications come in. Awarding more than $1.5 billion in grants to tribal entities and minority serving institutions, including more than $300 million from the Infrastructure Act. I think the other amounts may be related to maybe the Consolidated Act that passed, the coronavirus stuff, because some of that they added additional programs into the Infrastructure Act when it was passed, additional money. Calling more than 2,500 internet service providers to encourage them to provide data for the forthcoming map of high-speed internet availability. So that was related to, really it's a mandate that each internet service provider needed to go into what's called a broadband fabric. Broadband fabric is a list of every single broadband serviceable address in the United States, as we think they are, based on company called CostQuest that the FCC contracted with, who then looked at lots of different sources of data and satellite imagery, and they were trying to determine everywhere there's a structure that's supposed to have broadband. And then internet service providers had a period of time between June and September where they were to upload where they provided service on that fabric. So every location, they could see every location, and they looked at their service areas and did they pass those locations, and they needed to upload some data. So it sounds like they made 2,500 calls, or they called 2,500 internet service providers to encourage them to get that data in and hopefully get it in on time, because that is, those two things being put together is going to be what generates this FCC broadband map that's coming out in 2 days. So Friday, the new FCC broadband map is going to come out, and that's going to be a combination of all of these broadband serviceable locations that have been identified as best we know them right now, and then the data from all of the internet service providers that say, yes, we provide service at this home or at this business at this location, and our maximum download speed and upload speed are this, and yes, we are, or no, we're not, below 100 milliseconds round trip. Most everybody's going to be that. And there's a few other little data items that they need to have in there, but that's basically what's going to encompass this map. So everybody needs to get that information in, and then that's going to be looked at in this map, and they're calling it a preliminary map because we know the broadband fabric was not perfect, as we tried to identify. When I say we, I mean the government and CostQuest tried to identify every single broadband serviceable location. We know there's problems with that fabric, and there's been a challenge process, a bulk challenge process from various stakeholders like communities and service providers that could go in and challenge the locations on the map, saying, hey, you know what, you missed some, or you know what, this is a barn and it does not need internet, those kinds of things. So those challenges are taking place, and those will be reflected in the next fabric, but not in this one. So this first map is not going to have those bulk challenges or in the fabric. So we'll be seeing definitely mistakes on that. So the new map, after that map comes out, the final map is supposed to come out sometime in spring of next year. You see here, they also hired federal program officers to cover every state and territory participating to ensure each has a point of contact within the NTIA to help for broadband funding needs. So the original goal was to have one person for every state. I don't know if they've reached that goal. It says they want to ensure that each state has a point of contact. and my original thought was, does each state need one person? That seems kind of wasteful, because you would think one person acting as kind of an account manager, so to speak, or a customer service person for these states could handle multiple states. And they may have had to go that way because it's, people were having a hard time finding people. So not just, the government, but businesses and everybody. So it could be that they have, one person handling multiple states. It could be that they have one person handling several smaller states, and maybe there's one person for a larger state like Texas or California, something like that. But in any event, every state has a person, even if that person has more than one state. We don't know for sure. Let's see, they've co-hosted local coordination events in 6 states and counting, so they plan on doing more. They've holding 20 listening sessions and office hours, as well as 22 webinars to address concerns. So they haven't been doing that. So they have been doing that. So they've been trying to get webinars and listening sessions and other things so that people who have questions about this can dial in, and if they get in there live, they can ask questions. That's great. Hosting 7 consultations with hundreds of tribal leaders to solicit their input. Conducting more than 70 one-on-one technical assistance sessions for applicants. Responding to more than 360 inquiries across the BEAD program, digital equity and middle mile programs. And addressing state and local government stakeholder groups. And that's just a myriad, you can see, a myriad of groups that they have been trying to interface with. These are the groups that are local on the ground, kind of your smallest entities in some cases in areas that know what the issues are. So they've tried to engage there. And the states will be having to get engagement with these local stakeholders as well. So that's part of their requirements when they submit their 5-year plan, and is that they have indeed engaged with local stakeholders to make sure they get input and make sure they get as much data as they can as to who needs internet, who is, which areas are unserved, underserved, which areas are low income, where there needs to be that kind of assistance. So, and then next year we'll be doing even more. On tap for 2023, they say they're going to be improving the functionality of the internetforall.gov website, and they say that starts today. So I haven't looked at it yet, but there's an internet active map detailing, and today was yesterday, so this came out yesterday. An interactive map detailing the BEAD and DE, Digital Equity Program status by state and territory, and then also a calendar highlighting past and upcoming events, searchable by state or territory. So that's good, so you'll have that. I will probably show that at some point. Not today, but at some point in the future here, near future, I'll probably look at that, and if it's something worth showing, I'll do a broadcast about that. Determining by June 30th, 2023, the budget allocations each state and territory will receive for fund BEAD projects. So this was announced just the other day, where the FCC came out and they said, okay, we're going to put our first map out on November 18th. And then they kind of gave a timeline on the next portion of things, when the next broadband fabric will be ready for service providers to upload their data to, and then again the final map coming out in the spring. So when the FCC came out and said the first map's coming out on November 18th, NTIA came out and they said, okay, well, we're going to be determining, by then we'll be able to know which state gets how much, because again, they're going to need to know where all the unserved areas are in each state, and that's going to be based on this FCC map that's going to come out, not this one on Friday, but the next version that's going to come out in the early spring. And at that point, they'll be looking at all the data and they'll determine, okay, how much is each state going to get? Are they going to get their each one's going to get their $100 million. And then how much more do they get based on how many unserved locations are in their state compared to the rest of the country? So June 30th is when they make that determination. They'll be reviewing states and territory 5-year action plans. So those will be coming out. And that's going to be how those states will be awarding funding. Again, how they'll incorporate local stakeholder input, how they will enable internet service providers, local governments, and other stakeholders to challenge proposed project areas. So they've got to get all that in place in those 5-year plans. Overseeing states' initial proposals for the competitive grant process. So states are going to have to put together their process for being able to do these competitive grants. So, which service provider in each area is going to be able to get these funds. That's got to all be done. And then awarding funds through our tribal broadband connectivity and middle mile grant programs. So I kind of teased at the beginning here that something was missing, and what I see missing here is they're not necessarily committing at this point that they're going to be awarding funds through BEAD. So This is the tribal broadband connectivity and the middle mile grant programs. So as we saw, they've already gotten several hundred applications for middle mile grant programs, and they've already had applications for the tribal connectivity program, I believe. So they're going to be awarding those funds. But again, they're not going to know how much of the BEAD money is going to be available to each state until June. Then there's all of these processes. Again, there's reviewing the 5-year action plans. There's everything the states have to do. So the states have to do their 5-year action plan. They've got to get it into the NTIA. States have got to work on their competitive grant process. That's got to be reviewed by the NTIA. So they have not committed that any funds are going to be released next year. That doesn't mean they won't be, but they didn't put it down in writing here that, you know what, we're planning on getting the funds out by, let's say, fall of 2023. It's not mentioned. So that leads me to think that they're just not sure yet. Because again, there's a lot that has to happen. So again, a lot's been done. A lot of people were kind of hoping that this money would be available prior, or sooner than this. But a lot has been done. And we kind of are seeing the next steps that have to take place, and we've got some dates now in process. So again, we've got the map coming out Friday, and most likely, if that map is out early enough, I will do a live stream Friday to take a look at that, and then we've got that whole process, and then in June, we'll hopefully know how much money is going to each state. So there's still a lot that has to take place. But anyway, it's good that they're kind of listing their progress. It's been a year, and then a year from now. If they haven't awarded any funds a year from now, it should be pretty clear at that point when they will be able to, whether it'll be the end of next year or sometime in 2024. All right, thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. If this was interesting or helpful, if you'd give me a like on the video, subscribe if you're not subscribed, and click the little bell, and you'll be notified when I'm live. Thanks a lot. I will see you next time for Broadband Deployment News. Take care. Bye-bye.